In the last video, I talked about how to stay regulated when you become triggered during a conversation, how noticing the activation in your body and slowing the moment down can help prevent reactions that escalate conflict even more. But once you regulated yourself, another question naturally appears, which is, what do you actually say next? Because many of the hardest moments in relationships don't end when you calm down, they continue in the conversation that follows. And that's usually where things either repair or start to escalate again. A lot of people assume that once they've regulated themselves, the next step is to explain their side, to clarify what they meant, to defend their intentions, or to show the other person that they misunderstood the situation. And while those impulses are completely understandable, they often come from a subtle sense of urgency. Like the moment needs to be fixed or corrected right now. But this is where things can go quietly wrong. Because even if you are calmer on the surface, if the other person still feels unseen, the conversation reactivates anyway. And this has a lot to do with how the nervous system works during emotional moments. When someone is activated in a conversation, the nervous system is usually focused on one core question: do I feel understood right now? Not who is correct, not who has the better explanation, but whether their emotional experience is being recognized. And if you've ever been in a moment where you felt misunderstood, you probably know what that feels like in your body. There's tension, tightness, a feeling of needing to explain yourself or defend what you meant. And for a lot of people, that feeling didn't start in adulthood. It started much earlier. You could have felt it growing up when you were younger. Once, when expressing something honestly led to being dismissed, criticized, or misunderstood. So now, even in present day conversations, those same feelings can get activated again. Not just from what's happening now, but from what it reminds the body of from past experiences. So when someone doesn't feel understood, their body often stays defensive. You might notice it physically. Their tone stays tense. Their breathing feels shallow. Their posture remains guarded or even closed off. Even if the conversation continues, their nervous system still feels like it needs to protect itself. So naturally, you might ask, if explaining doesn't help in that moment, then what does? And this is where communication after regulation often begins, with something very simple. Not explaining, but understanding first. For example, imagine someone says, "You never really listen to me." A natural reaction might be, "That's not true. I do listen. You're just not seeing it." But even if that feels accurate to you, in that moment, they're not asking to be corrected. They're expressing how something felt for them. And if that feeling isn't acknowledged first, the conversation usually escalates. So instead, sometimes the most stabilizing thing you can do in the moment like that is reflect back what you heard the other person express. You might say something like, "It sounds like that moment made you feel hurt." Or, it seems like you felt dismissed when that happened. Or even more specifically, it sounds like you felt like I wasn't really present with you in that moment. And this might be small, it might feel small, but something important happens when you do this. Their nervous system begins to settle. You might actually see it. Their shoulders drop slightly, their breathing slows, their tone softens just a little. And what often happens next is they start explaining more clearly, not defending, not attacking, just opening up. Because for the first time in that moment, they feel seen, not analyzed, not corrected, just understood. And this is an important distinction. Reflecting someone's experience does not mean you agree with everything that they're saying. It doesn't mean you're taking blame. It simply means you recognize that their emotional experience is real for them. And that alone can reduce a lot of the tension in the moment. Once someone feels understood, their nervous system usually becomes much more open. Defensiveness lowers, curiosity starts to come back, and that's the moment where real communication becomes possible. Because now you're not talking to a defensive system, you're talking to a receptive one. And from there, you can begin expressing your own experience more clearly, not from urgency, not from defensiveness, but from steadiness. For example, instead of reacting quickly, you might say, when that happened, I felt confused and didn't know how to respond in that moment. Notice the difference? There's no pressure in that. There's no blame, no attempt to win the moment, just clarity. And when communication follows this pattern, regulation first, understanding second, and expression third, something deeper starts to change. Conversations feel less tense. Misunderstandings become easier to repair, and both people begin to feel safer expressing themselves. And over time, those small moments build something important: trust. Not through perfect communication, but through repeated experiences of safety. Because each person learns I can be emotional and express what I feel, and this doesn't have to turn into conflict. But there's something important to remember here. Communication itself is not what stabilizes a relationship. Regulation does. Communication only becomes effective when the nervous system feels safe enough to actually receive what's being said, not before. And this is why so many arguments feel like they go in circles. Not because people don't care, but because both nervous systems are activated at the same time. And when that happens, communication turns into reaction, not understanding. In the next video, I'm going to go deeper into something very practical, which is how to actually reflect and validate someone's emotional experience in a real conversation without losing your own voice in the process. Because understanding the idea is one thing, but knowing how to apply it in the moment is what really changes your relationships.